Hey friends, it's time for a story time. So I realized I've never told the story and I want to tell it. So here goes. Connor, this was like last year, I think. Yeah, probably the very beginning of last year. I can't really remember the date. Anyway, Connor went to school. All was good. After school, I don't remember why Jeremy was off, but Jeremy was off. So Connor got dropped off at home with Jeremy until I got off of work. And I got off of work and he wasn't feeling good. He was like, he had a cold, but it was like he stayed at school all day. Like it wasn't bad. It was just like, a little cold. And so I get home from work and I walk in the house and I cannot wait, y'all. I'm one of these people when I didn't today because it's Wednesday and we have church tonight. But when I get home, I change into PJs. It's my jam. It's what I do. If I'm at home, I'm not in clothes. I'm in PJs. So I started to go to the bedroom, but instead I went in the living room and Connor is on the couch. And at first I thought he was asleep. But then, because Jeremy was asleep on the other couch. But then when I got closer, I realized he is awake. And his breathing is out of this world. Like labored. And he had pneumonia enough at that point where I'm like, oh, shoot, And so I felt of him. He's burning. I mean, I couldn't stand to have my hand on him. So I called his pediatrician, and they're like, yes, bring him in because they know how he is and how sick he can get in, like, the blink of an eye. So they're always so good about getting him in. And they're like, bring him in. So I strap him in the car, and I take off to Athens to take him to the doctor. And Jeremy, which is like 20 minutes away, something like that. And Jeremy's like, I had texted Jeremy earlier to see if he was okay. And he was like, yeah, he's playing around. He's still sniffly and stuff. He's a little puny, but he was playing and all that just hours earlier. And so I'm driving, and every time I would look back at him in his car seat, I would hit the gas harder because he was really trying to breathe. So we get to the pediatrician, and again, like I hadn't went into huge detail with them. They knew he was running a fever and stuff like that. But I guess maybe I should have specified more because like in the waiting room, they made me, and again, I'm not mad at them. Please don't think I'm throwing shade at them. But they had me update paperwork. And I think they really felt bad for this later because we ended up getting sent by ambulance to the hospital. But anyway. So I'm up there updating paperwork, and I'm looking over at him, and I'm looking at him breathe, and I'm like, Lord have mercy, this is not good. Okay. So we get took back, and they go to take his chin. The first thing they do is, like, blood pressure and check their temperature. So when she checked his temperature, I always look to see. And it was, like, 102.9, and I'm like, oh, this is bad, because I've never known Connor to run a temp like that high. At this point, he has since then, but at that point. So she didn't even check his blood pressure because he normally gets worked up for that. So she just takes him to a room. In comes a doctor. My doctor's office has several different doctors. And this was a new lady. And nothing against the new people because we're open to seeing whoever. But on this particular day, my heart sank. And the reason being was I would have rather him saw someone who knows him, who can look at him and say, this ain't normal. Like, he's not a whiny, puny child. Like, he's happy, carefree. And she couldn't do that because she was just meeting him. But again, she was super nice and she was great. But that was my first thought when she walked in the room was like, you're kidding me. But anyway, so she's trying to check him out, trying to listen to him. She's asking me a few questions. And around that time, and he's burning hot. And she's like, I'm going to bring him in some medicine. Well, before they could get bring in the medicine for his temperature, he threw up. And this freaked me out because I was afraid maybe he was throwing up because his fever was so high. Like, I didn't know what was going on. And he threw up. And when he threw up, it was like a red color. And her eyes got so big. And she immediately asked me, what has he ate today? And my heart sank. when I said, I don't know he's been at school. Like, it just broke my heart to not know. I don't know he's been at school. And I didn't realize at the time, but later I realized she thought it might be blood. Like, she didn't know what was going on, and it freaked her out. The next thing I knew, she brought in a breathing treatment and oxygen. She brought in a breathing treatment to do after she listened to him. She's like, "Oh, this ain't good. Let me get him a breathing treatment and see if it improves." And like, this was all a whirlwind, because the next thing I knew, paramedics walked in. And I'm like, "What's going on?" She's like, "I'm sending you to Athens Hospital," which, where our pediatricians is, Athens Hospital is not even a mile away. It's like around the corner. And I'm like, "Well, can I just drive him?" Because, and I don't want y'all to think I'm a horrible parent, but at the time, we were still paying on his last ambulance bill. So I'm like, "Can I just drive him? You basically can see it from the pediatrician's office." And she said, "His oxygen is so low and he's in respiratory distress. I'm not comfortable with you driving him." And that's when I realized and started crying like a big old baby. That's when I realized the severity of this, because I just drove 20 minutes with this kid and she's not comfortable with me driving a mile. Like, it freaked me out. So then she says, "What about your car?" And I remember crying. Oh, I started crying, and I kept saying, "I'm not worried about my car. I'm not worried about my car. Just leave it. Just leave it." So they didn't take the time, and his oxygen was like in the 70s, if I remember correctly. And so they didn't take the time for me to get my car seat and all that, which they normally would. And I think it was probably because we were going like a mile. So they strapped me on the gurney and strapped him in my lap, and we're strapped down to it. And when they're rolling, I vividly remember this. They rolled us out of the exam room. And when they rolled us through the waiting room, these looks, like these sad, sad looks on people's face, like people feel so bad for you. And when I glanced over at the girl at the receptionist desk who had made us renew our paperwork, which again, I'm not mad at her, the look on her face, like, I think she realized, oh my gosh, like, I just made them sit in the lobby renewing paperwork, and he's on a gurney right now. So it was raining outside. So they covered me and Connor up with a sheet. It was a white sheet. We're on a gurney. And so the paramedics are laughing. I'm laughing, because you're wheeling someone out of a pediatric doctor's office with a white sheet draped over them. You know, like, it doesn't look good. Who would want to go in after that? But anyway, so we laugh. And then they take us to Athens Hospital. They take us back to a room. They're asking me 40 bazillion questions. A lot of the stuff I didn't have the answers to, because, again, he'd been at school. And they did an x-ray. And they're like, his lungs cloudy. You know, we think it's pneumonia. We really want to send you to Children's. And I'm like, perfect. Let's do it. So they sent us to Children's, and it was storming that day, and I remember it blew that ambulance all over the road. Like, it was the most, and it wasn't the paramedics' fault, but it was the most awful ride I'd ever been on. It was bad. And so they didn't run lights or anything, but they had him on oxygen and stuff in the ambulance. And anyway, we got to Children's, and we got put into a room and all that, and the doctor comes in and talks to us, and he's like, "Well, we really need an x-ray, blah, blah, blah. They sent the one from Athens Hospital, but the attachment's not opening." And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Because I'm thinking, insurance ain't going to pay for 2 chest x-rays in one day. Like, it didn't change in an hour. You know what I mean? Like, they are not going to, but at that point, what am I going to do? So I'm like, yeah, run another one. So they run an x-ray themselves, and so we're in a room just waiting. Connor has had an IV at that point, and he's getting a little bit happier, I guess you'd say. You can tell he's a little bit better. And again, it's just getting fluids and IVs in him. He didn't really feel better, and so they we're just letting him watch TV, like he's having a good old time. And they come in and they talk to us about the scarring in his left lung, which we knew he had, and how they think that his lungs are cloudy, but it's not like full-blown pneumonia yet, and how they think that they can treat it with antibiotics and breathing treatments, and how they think that Athens just saw the scarring and kind of got freaked out and sent him up. And so we're like, okay, so we're sitting in the room, and at this point we don't know if we're being admitted or not, what's happening. We weren't sure. And so Connor's just laughing and hooping and hollering. This is like close to midnight. And finally, one of the nurses come in and he said, hey, we just need to monitor him while he sleeps. And they want to see his oxygen while he sleeps. And I'm like, what? Like, I had been letting him watch TV and hoop and holler. Like, are you serious? And I'm like, okay. So we turned the TV off. We dimmed the lights in the room. And in like 30 minutes, he was asleep, which he would have went to sleep way sooner. We didn't know we were supposed to be trying to get him to sleep, you know. So he went to sleep, and while he slept, his oxygen did not dip, like, to the point where the alarm would have went off, which is what they were watching. And so I went out, once he fell asleep, I went out in the hall to find the bathroom. And when I passed the nurse's station, I said, hey, he's asleep. And he's like, okay. So he pulls up, so he's watching just us, you know. And then they come in, and they're like, he's like, okay, well, his oxygen was good while he was sleeping. Here's the thing for the antibiotics. You guys can go. And we got discharged at 3 a.m. 3 a.m. And I forgot to put this in, but when we went to Athens Hospital to Knoxville, since it was a much longer ride, we had to get the car seat. So, like, my mom's trying to go to the parking garage in the dark creepiness and pull the car around. I'm trying to get the car seat and Connor to the car. We've woke him up. He's groggy. He's cranky. Anyway, it was crazy. I cannot believe we got discharged that night. I really can't. It was the craziest thing. 3 a.m. discharged. Needless to say, Connor and I slept most of the next day because, my gosh, by the time we got home and got settled, it was morning. Anyway, well, it was already morning, 3 a.m., but you know what I mean. But we did find out later that he'd had spaghetti that day, so he did eat something red. And here he comes. Hi, you want to talk to him? Here. Oh, you're so big. Say hey. So we're just talking about all my medical stuff. Yes, we are. Burpee. Don't burp on my channel. So, anyway, that's our little story about the time we were discharged at 3 a.m. from Children's Hospital. And I'm glad we were discharged, don't get me wrong. It was just crazy how it happened. And again, I think it was just miscommunication on our part too, because we didn't understand that they're waiting on him to sleep to see if he, like, we're in there letting him stay awake. We could have got him to sleep way sooner. But anyway, when insurance came, insurance would not pay for 2 ambulance rides in one day. So guess which one insurance paid for? Insurance paid for the 1 mile trip, and I had to pay for the other one. Thank you, insurance. Cool move. I don't really remember paying for the x-ray. I feel like they paid for both of those because we had x-ray at both hospitals. I feel like they paid for both of those. But anyway, that is my crazy story time of being discharged at 3 a.m. Crazy. Anyway, thank y'all for watching, and I will talk to y'all next time.